March 15, 1944, Pratt Army Airfield, Kansas. Flames tear out of the No. 3 engine of a B-29 Superfortress. Black smoke vomits from the cowling. Captain Robert Morgan watches in stunned silence as the Wright R-3350 2200 horsepower of American engineering cooks itself alive at 600 degrees Fahrenheit. Ground crews sprint with extinguishers. Morgan kills the mixture and flips the fire suppression switches. Nothing. The CO2 bottles can't reach the heart of the blaze. It's in the rear cylinders, trapped behind baffles and cooling fins where no extinguisher can touch it. "Everybody out!" Morgan yells. The crew becomes a practiced machine. 45 seconds to evacuation. By the time the fire trucks hit the runway, the $600,000 bomber is a total loss. The flames have melted through the main wing spar. The aircraft will be scrapped for parts. And this is not combat. This is Kansas. This is a training flight. It's happening everywhere. At Smoky Hill, a B-29 burns on the runway. At Walker Field, 2 more catch fire during engine run-ups. At Great Bend, a Superfortress explodes on takeoff, killing all 11 crewmen before the aircraft ever clears the ground. The statistics are brutal. Of the first 175 B-29s delivered to the Army Air Forces, 16 are burned completely, and another 47 suffer major engine fires. An engine failure rate of 35%. The B-29, the most expensive weapons program in American history, costlier even than the Manhattan Project, is on the brink. General Hap Arnold promised President Roosevelt B-29s would be bombing Japan by June 1944. At this rate, the program will kill more Americans in training than the enemy will in combat. Engineers at Wright Aeronautical, Boeing and NACA scratch their heads in laboratories and wind tunnels. The verdict is bleak. The R-3350 is thermodynamically overstuffed. 18 cylinders in 2 rows, 9 up front, 9 in the back, produce fabulous power on paper, but the rear cylinders sit in the shadow of the front row and rarely see fresh air. Rear cylinder temperatures routinely climb above 550 degrees Fahrenheit and spike to 650 degrees Fahrenheit during takeoff. Aluminum heads warp at 500 degrees Fahrenheit. Exhaust valves fail at 575 degrees Fahrenheit. At 600 degrees Fahrenheit, cylinders seize and connecting rods snap. When that happens, hot oil sprays over superheated metal and the magnesium engine case ignites, burning fiercely enough to eat through a wing spar in under 90 seconds.
Boeing redesigns intakes, enlarges oil coolers, rewrites cowl flap geometry. Nothing fixes it without tearing the aircraft apart. Redesigning baffles means redesigning cowlings, wings, the whole airframe. Boeing estimates 18 months and $50 million to retool. Arnold doesn't have 18 months. The first combat missions are scheduled for June 5, 1944, less than 12 weeks away. What nobody expects is that the fix will not come from elegant aerodynamic theory or university laboratories. It will come from a 38-year-old plumber-turned-mechanic from Cleveland, Antonio "Tony" Validor. 7th grade education, 15 years running residential plumbing, a man who learned how fluids behave by crawling through basements and fighting blocked pipes. He's about to suggest something so simple engineers will laugh, and so effective it will save the B-29 program. Tony arrived at Pratt as a wartime maintenance hand. He knows flow, how water follows the path of least resistance, how a blocked line needs a bypass. One night in September 1944, inspecting a B-29 that had thrown an overheat warning, he peels open the cowling and studies the rear cylinders. Blackened, heat-stressed, cooked. He traces the path cooling air is supposed to take. It enters forward, cools the front cylinders, then, in theory, finds its way between the rows to the rear cylinders. In reality, that air stagnates. The front cylinders heat the incoming air, and because there's no efficient exit or pressure differential, the warmed air sits and smolders, heating the rear cylinders instead of cooling them.
Tony thinks about a job years earlier. The third-floor radiators on Euclid Avenue never got hot
because the hot water took the easy route to the second floor. His fix then was a simple bypass that rerouted flow directly where it was needed. What if he did the same for the R3350? He scavenges aluminum tubing from a salvaged ship, borrows a cutting torch, and over 3 nights fabricates crude ducts, little pipes that route fresh cooling air around the front cylinders and directly to the rear. They're ugly, hand-formed, held with sheet metal screws and sealant. They look like a plumber's hack. But when Captain James Wheeler runs the modified engine the next morning, the rear cylinder temperatures stabilize at 425 to 430 degrees Fahrenheit, some 60 degrees Fahrenheit lower than normal, and remain steady at full power. Wheeler assumes the gauge has failed, but repeated runs with different thermocouples show the same result. When maintenance uncovers Tony's unauthorized modification, the response is fury. Unauthorized changes to military aircraft are a court-martial offense. Tony is pulled before Major Donald Peterson and told he could face criminal charges. Tony is blunt. He saw the problem and fixed the flow. The data is on the table. Consistent, repeatable temperature drops. Peterson can't ignore it. He forwards the logs to Wright Field. 2 days later, Tony is on a C-47 to Dayton, carrying his ducks in a canvas bag like any tradesman with his tools. He stands before a room of 12 engineers from Wright Aeronautical, Boeing, NACA, and the Army. They are unimpressed. The ducts violate textbook cooling flow. They cause drag, disrupt total airflow, and are impractical to produce across the fleet. The lawyers, the analysts, the stress engineers all say the same thing. You can't fix this without redesigning the engine.
Colonel Curtis LeMay, a no-nonsense commander who doesn't care where the solution comes from, cuts through the debate. "Sergeant Validor," he says, "if you've solved this, we'll use it." He slams the temperature logs down on the table and gives the engineers an order. Reverse engineer the idea. Make it production-worthy and do it fast. Not in months, not in weeks, in 20 days. "Sometimes the best solution is the simple one," LeMay tells Tony. "Don't let these engineers overcomplicate it." What follows is a frenzy of engineering. The handmade ducts are measured, stress analyzed, vibration tested, and redesigned into parts that can be manufactured. Wright Aeronautical, Boeing, and NACA collaborate, turning a plumber's intuition into a standardized modification for the R3350. Flights that had been nightmares become reliable. Rear cylinder temperatures drop across the board. The B-29 stop burning on American runways and start sailing toward the Pacific with crews who can finally trust their engines. October 15, 1944. Tony's idea undergoes the most intensive testing in aviation history. The crude aluminum pipes have become engineered components that save lives and aircraft. The program that threatened to bite itself to death is steadied, not by a brilliant laboratory breakthrough, but by a tradesman's understanding of flow. Give the air a path, and it will take it. This is the moment when history turned, when a plumber with a pipe wrench taught aeronautical experts the simplest lesson. Sometimes the path of least resistance is the path to survival.